hospital had a secret. They'd made a terrible blunder and hadn't told Peter. 6 months later, he developed an unexplained swelling near his transplant site.
I just thought this was just a touch of rejection, which I hadn't had up until then, and went down and was assured at the hospital that, you know, everything was fine and to go away and have a good Christmas.
But the swelling got worse. He had to go in for an exploratory operation. When he came round, he discovered they had taken out his new kidney.
After 2 or 3 days of sort of going in and out of consciousness as a result of the anaesthetic, and I suddenly thought, well, they haven't told me why it was removed.
Peter feared he might have caught AIDS during the transplant operation, but was told this wasn't the case.
The other thing that people don't tell you about is if it's cancer. So I said, well, if it wasn't AIDS, it was cancer then. Well, Dr. Trafford will be along to see you later.
Only then did his doctors tell him that the donor had died of cancer. They later broke the news that following the transplant of the cancerous kidney, he now had the disease.
Not only had I lost that kidney, I'd also got cancer, which obviously I was frightened about because it had been in the family before. And I was back on dialysis, like it or not.
Peter's life was now dominated by alternate days of kidney dialysis and radiotherapy for his cancer.
Sunday became my day off, and I used to spend Sunday dinner times trying to eat my roast dinner, but actually crying my eyes out for being so depressed.
The outlook was bleak. Tests revealed the cancer had spread to his stomach, lymph glands and main aorta.
They've managed to give me cancer quite well, actually.
He decided to take the hospital to court.
I used to think to myself, someone's going to pay for this somehow. I will get to the bottom of it. I will find out who was responsible.
Peter was in for a shock. He found out that his doctors knew 3 days after the transplant that the kidney they had given him could cost him his life.
The donor, in fact, had had cancer and had died of cancer. And of course, kidneys filter your blood. And one of the best ways of cancer spreading is via the blood.
Peter was stunned when he saw internal hospital correspondence about his case.
He is a tragic case who was in renal failure, had a transplant.
Although one must fear that the outlook is hopeless.
His colleagues that the best course was to wait and do repeated studies of the transplanted kidney.
I proved my point in a court of law, and that's what I wanted to do. And my case wasn't swept under the carpet.
The High Court found the hospital guilty of medical negligence. The judge said,
"They could not really have made greater blunders in the way that they treated him once they realized that they had put in a potentially cancerous kidney, even if they meant well."
Peter was awarded £23,000, but didn't receive a penny because he turned down an out-of-court settlement for a higher amount.
No one has ever said sorry to this day who should say sorry. But there was an apology in court. But when you're in court in front of all those wonderful people in wigs, it would be difficult not to apologise. I don't accept that to this day as an apology. An apology is saying, I'm very sorry so-and-so happened to someone's face.
Peter has since been given a second kidney, and against the odds, his cancer is now in remission.
I went into the operating theatre thinking I was having a simple operation.
In November 1998, Sylvia went to the National Hospital to have a brain tumour removed. The following day, she was visited by her surgeon.
He said, "Good morning. I've got good news and bad news for you. I'm afraid the good news is the tumour was in your membrane and that came out perfectly. We drained the cyst. The bad news was we cut the wrong side of your head open by mistake." It did not sink in. I turned around and I said to the doctor, with all my bottles, "Oh, so you were playing noughts and crosses, were you?" And he said, "Yes, and I won." He told me that where they'd gone into the side of it and they'd found it was wrong, instead of closing it up and going in the right side, they cut right across the top of my head. They then cut down to the front of my brow bone. They then cut an inch out of my brow bone, and then they lifted the flap and took the tumour away from there, and then they sewed me all back up. I've got the biggest indentation in my head. I felt like Frankenstein's daughter. I felt that I'd been used in an abominable experiment.
Sylvia has received an official apology from the hospital and an explanation. The surgeon had looked at the scan the wrong way round.
They put me to sleep and they cut open the wrong side of my head, and then they turn around and say, well, they looked at the scan back to front. It's not as if the doctor didn't know who I was. I'd been to see him 4 times. And I feel very angry regarding the surgeon that made this mistake.
I'm actually frightened myself if I have to go into hospital. I really am, because it's just disgusting, really disgusting.
You just felt like you wanted to cover yourself with plastic before you even went in there.
It was like a war zone. It was absolutely disgusting. It was filthy.
I couldn't believe it. There was blood on the walls.
There was dirty bandages left on his bed.
There was blood on the floor.
Plasters on the floor that I noticed that were there for 3 weeks.
There was blood in the sink. There was blood in the bath.
There was full-up urine bottles around patients' bed.
I mean, it was absolutely disgusting.
It does turn your stomach to see it. It really does.
I had a cesarean, and a little baby, completely, both of us, at the point where, I was open to infection because I had a great big open wound. The baby was a day old.
I've seen pigeons flying around wards where the staff jokingly refer to it as the hospital mascot. Money has got a lot to do with it, but so has management. Management do need to take responsibility for hygiene and cleanliness at the highest level.
A lot of that can be attributed to a general reduction in frequency of cleaning.
The NHS is trying to practice 21st century medicine in 19th century, often 19th century hospitals.
Dust does not look nice.
There's dust on the walls, dirty windows.
It can indicate slovenliness and a lack of general hygiene standards.
We don't accept that level of cleanliness at home. Why should we experience it in hospitals of all places?
More than that, dust does have the potential to transmit certain germs.
Nicky Dorrington's friend went into St Thomas's Hospital for a simple operation, but nearly died from an infection it's believed he caught there.
He was coughing up blood. He couldn't breathe. He needed oxygen to breathe. He needed very strong pain relief. And I was just so frightened. I really thought he was going to die, that he was going to die there and then.
When the Prime Minister was opening a new ward at the hospital, Nicky told him exactly what she thought.
I shouted at Tony Blair, "You are a liar. That's what you are, nothing but a liar." I just had to say it because I was so incensed. He was glorifying the National Health Service, and I don't know how he's got the front to do that, because really it's in a mess, a complete mess.
What we discovered was that many places are actually reusing equipment and not sterilising them properly.
The problems arise with some of the high-cost, highly technical equipment, and then sometimes cleaning and decontamination may be compromised.
Would you like to have something that's still got somebody else's body parts on them inserted in you? I certainly wouldn't.
Demands upon the health service have never been greater, and the job of nursing never tougher. There are currently 22,000 unfilled nursing vacancies.
My mother was a nurse, and that was the only thing I wanted to do. I had no other ambitions at all.
In 1989, Adele realised her dream, but after 6 years, she left nursing.
There were a few things that really stand out in my mind, and they're the things that always remind me that I will never go back to nursing. Anyone who works in the NHS will tell you there's an enormous sense of hierarchy. In theatre, the surgeon is king, basically. And I always remember an old lady was having an above-knee amputation because she was diabetic. She couldn't have a general anaesthetic because she was too ill. So she was under local anaesthetic. So she was conscious. She was aware of what was going on. And basically, the surgeon knobbed the leg off. And basically, he just shouted out, "Bag," like this. And somebody shoved a bag into my hand. And I opened it up just in time for him to lob. He threw the patient's leg in the bag at me, basically. Half of the, because it was above the knee, half of it was kind of hanging over the bag. And I was just left there. And basically, I felt very angry. I couldn't say anything because she was conscious and I didn't want to make a big fuss. But how absolutely appalling was that? He just threw the leg at me.
The world's oldest profession.
Everybody knows it's going on, it's just people don't want to open their eyes to it.
Is now a modern-day business.
It's a product, and all the girls that we meet are just that, they're product.
Sex sells, and Britain is buying.
There's nothing bigger than the sex industry.
Meet the movers and the shakers.
Very impressed, I'm going to say.
I've been a wild child.
A new series, Vice, inside Britain's sex business. Tuesday after the ITV News at 10.
If you pick up a Cheltenham and Gloucester cash gift mortgage, you could get from £1 to over £13,000 cash in hand. Call us, click on, or come into CNG or Lloyd's TSB. Cheltenham and Gloucester, looking after your best interests.
Unforgettable.
Campino.
That's what you are. Unforgettable. Though near or far. Like a song.
Campino. Discover the taste you'll never forget.
With a teenager and a toddler in the house, I really need the washing machine. I would do anything to avoid it breaking down. It needs to be working, I need to use it.
We are